Welcome back once again to our PC channel. So in today's video, we are going to look at forecasting in business. So we begin nice and slowly by looking at what is forecasting, looking at the various ways that we can forecast within the organization, and then end the discussion by looking at what is bias in forecasting. So what is forecasting? So forecasting in simple terms has to do with what? Making predictions. Forecasting in simple terms has to do with making prediction. At certain point in the life cycle of a business cannot achieve what is put today without what? Making prediction or without making what? A decision. Right? So decision becomes the core concern for every business organization. You are talking about what? Decision. Okay? So to forecast means you make better plans now to achieve what? A certain what? Aim in the future or tomorrow. That's what we call what? Forecast. So in simple terms, forecast has to do with what? Making prediction. So realize that forecast becomes what? The core component of every business organization. Right? It seeks to make decisions now that will achieve success tomorrow. Right? So it's about bridging the gap between what? Present and what? The future. And that has to do with what? Making a quality decision that you put it now that will reflect what? The future success of the organization. Because remember, every business organization seeks to achieve what? Competitive edge within the market. So how you make decision now that will affect tomorrow will determine the quality of your prediction for the future. So that is what we call forecasting. Forecasting has to do with making predictions for the future. And it's all based on what? Making what? Quality what? Decision. Making quality decision. So we are talking about what? Quality decision. We are talking about quality what? Decision. So that is what we mean by what? Forecasting. So the aim of forecast within organization is one, to make the possible best prediction for the future. So making what? The best possible prediction for the future, right? That has what? A reduced error. Okay, and also providing an information that we can rely on. So we are talking about three things. Forecast achieve three things. One is to what? Provide what? The best possible prediction for the future. So you are talking about what? Best possible prediction for the future. Okay, that is one. Two, minimizing errors, and then also providing what? Reliable what? Reliable information. So when we forecast, this is what we seek to what? Achieve. Providing the best possible prediction for the future for the organization, and also that has a minimized or a reduced error, and then also providing an information that we can rely and to make other predictions for the future. So that's what we call what? Forecasting. That's what we call forecasting. All right. So that is what forecast seeks to achieve within the organization. It's about making quality decisions that will affect what? Tomorrow. That will affect tomorrow. Right? So that is the whole idea about what? Forecasting. That is the whole idea about forecasting. So what are the various ways that we can forecast within the organization? So you ask, what are the factors that we to consider in forecasting? Right? So when it comes to ways of forecasting, we talk about what? Classifications of what? Forecasting. And under the classifications of forecasting, we have two categories of forecasting in terms of their classification. So we talk about classifications of forecasting. Classification. So we're looking at classification. Under classification, we have what? Two categories. We have one that has to do whether we make use of what? Numbers or not. So we're talking about what? Whether we make use of numbers or not. Another, we talk about what? Qualitative stroke quantitative forecasting. And then as well, we also talk about what? Time, their time duration. So we talk about time horizon. Their time horizon. So these are the two categories of what? Forecasting. So another classification, we have what? Whether we make use of numbers or we don't make use of numbers. And we have what? Qualitative to quantitative forecasting. And then we also have what? The time horizon. That's where we take into account time, right? So these are the two classifications of what? Forecasting. So under the time horizon, we can talk about what? Three items here. These are what? One, we have the long term, the long-term what? Forecasting. We have the medium term. Okay, and we have what? The short term. The short-term forecasting. So under the time horizon here, we are talking about what? Taking time as a factor in forecasting. And at that, we're looking at the long-term forecast. We also look at the medium-term forecast. We look at what? The short-term forecast. When it comes to the long-term forecasting, the goal here has to do with where, for example, the organization wants to, let's say, open a new branch. Let's say we have what? Two different branches. Let's say branch A and let's say branch what? B. And at a certain point in the life of the business are going to a certain size that it cannot have two branches. It must expand so that it can have other branch in other areas. And let's say they decide they want to have branch what? C. When we are making this kind of plans, then we are into what? A long-term forecast. In terms of time horizon, we are into a long-term forecast. And such decision is always made by what? Topmost people within the organization. And we refer to this group as what? The top level what? Management. So I'll use the initials to represent what? The top level management, CLM, right? So they are the group of people who actually what? Make a long-term kind of what? Forecast, right? And their decisions are mostly what? Unstructured. Okay? Their decisions are mostly what? Unstructured. But unstructured decisions, they are decisions that do not involve what? Other group of people, or that do not go through what? A series of change before a final decision is made. Right? They are made by a small group of people within the organization who have what? High position within the organization, right? So such decision doesn't follow any pattern before it gets to what? A group of people, before it gets to the final what? Stage. That's what we call unstructured what? Decision. The decision that can be made what? Arbitrarily by certain group of people who hold higher position within the organization. So long-term forecast, for example, while we're talking about opening of new branch, having a new plant within the organization, such decisions are made by what? The top level management, and such decisions are what? Unstructured, right? So that's what we call a long-term forecast. So whenever we are making a decision concerned about what? Something that have what? Let's say in terms of duration, more than 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years to come, then we are into what? A long-term what? Forecast. And such decisions are made by the top level management, and as we said, they are what? Unstructured what? Decision. So let's take note of that. And when we talk about the medium-term forecast, as we discussed, there is a composition of what? Both what? Structured and unstructured decisions. So here we are talking about what? Functional managers, right? We are talking about functional managers and refer to them as what? A middle level what? Management. Middle level. So they are a group of people who make what? Such decisions. We call them functional what? Managers, right? So for them, they make what we call a structured. They make a semi-structured kind of what? Decision within the organization. They make a semi-structured within the organization. In terms of this, they make what? A semi-structured. So in terms of forecasting, they will come out with, for example, let's say the business want to kind of, let's say, how should I even put it across? Let's say the business want to bring in, let's say, employ new staff. Employment, right? That can be a medium-term forecast. So that is the medium-term forecast. So another medium-term forecasting is being made by what? A middle-level managers, and they make what? A semi-structured. So the kind of decision that they make, or the kind of forecast they made, will have to pass through a certain group of people before it gets to them, so that they will also add up their ideas to finalize what? The decision that we want to make for the future. This is what we call what? A medium-term forecast. A medium-term in terms of what? Time horizon. They make a semi-structured decision. And as I said, these decisions are made, for example, if the business decides to, let's say, have, employees within the organization, that's recruitment within the organization, such decision can be made within what? A medium-term kind of forecast, right? Because recruiting an employee or a potential employee within the organization to come to the organization will have what? Kind of a long duration, depend on what? The terms of what? The contract that will succeed between the employee and the organization can be made within what? A medium-term forecast. So let's take note of that. So that's a medium-term forecast being made by a middle-level management, and then their semi-structured decision. And when we talk about the short-term forecast has to do with what? The day-to-day kind of forecast that we actually engage on. It can be weekly, monthly kind of what? Forecasting. For example, if the business decided to, let's say, come out with a new product, right? Talk about in terms of the sale they want to achieve for a particular period, this kind of decision can be achieved within a short-term period, and they are made by operational managers. So we call them the lower level management, or the operational managers. They are those who make a short-term decision. For example, if they want to know the sale they want to achieve for a particular week or a particular month, if they also want to know the new product they want to introduce to the market by undertaking survey and those kind of stuff, then we are into a short-term forecast. So this is what we need to understand when it comes to the time horizon. Here we take time as a factor in forecasting. So I hope that is clear. So that's what we call the long-term forecast, the medium-term forecast, and then the short-term forecast. So let's take note of that. So once we take into account time horizon as a factor in forecast, we can also look at whether you also make use of numbers or we don't make use of numbers. And another, we are looking at we are looking at qualitative forecasting and then the quantitative forecasting. So here we talk about qualitative stroke quantitative. Okay, so we'll take them one by one and discuss how they affect decision that we make now that will affect tomorrow, right? So we'll look at qualitative. So under the qualitative forecasting, it's a kind of forecast that we can call it as a judgmental kind of forecasting. Mostly called judgmental sampling kind of forecast, right? So here, when it comes to qualitative forecasting, we use qualitative forecast as a means of forecast with the organization where it becomes so difficult for us to obtain numerical data in making prediction for the future. That is why we bring in qualitative forecasting, right? So, or where, for example, where in terms of duration, it's very too far for us to make decision now that can affect the future. That's where we can bring in qualitative forecasting. So under the qualitative forecasting, it is based on the subjective view of certain group of people that the business will collect and then they use as estimation to forecast for the whole organization. So most of the time, this kind of forecast that we made and the qualitative forecasting, they are subjective and they are full of biases. So as we take the discussion further, you get to understand what a bias is within a forecasting context, right? Within the organization when making decision. So under the qualitative forecasting, as we have said, we have 4 ways of actually forecast using the qualitative forecasting, and we discuss them intensively. So under that, we have 4 categories of qualitative forecasting, and these are one, we have Delphi method. We have the Delphi method. The Delphi method as one. We also have the jury of executive opinion. We also call this judgmental sampling. So whether jury of executive opinion or judgmental sampling, it also has this. They are the same in terms of So if you don't see judgmental sampling, you can also see jury of executive. So let's take note of that. You also have as well the issue about sales force. So you also have sales force composite, sales force composite. Okay, and lastly we have consumer market survey. Consumer market survey. So these are the 4 ways that we can use qualitative method to forecast within the organization. So let's discuss them intensively and look at how they affect decisions that the business make now that affect tomorrow. So when we talk about the Delphi method actually have is an iterative process. What is an iterative process? This process actually includes 3 participants, right? Includes 3 participants. And these participants are the first group of participants are called the experts, right? And the second group are called the staff, and the third group are called the respondents, right? So we have experts, we have staff, and we have respondents. So these are the groups that we are talking about. We have experts, okay? We have experts, we have staffs, and lastly we have respondents. respondent. Okay, we have respondent. Okay, so we have experts, staffs, and then respondent. Who are the experts? Who are the staff? Who are the respondents? So we are saying that this is an iterative process, and this process consists of what? Three participants: expert, staff, and respondent. The experts are actual group of people who make decision, and the expert who comprises of what? 5 to what? 10 group of people who actually what? Make the actual forecast for what? The organization. When we are using what? Delphi method as a way of what? Forecasting for the organization, right? So the experts are those group of people who actually work, make what? The decision or forecast for the organization. But before they can forecast or make decision for the organization now, that will affect tomorrow, they must have take an information from the staff. And what are the staff doing when it comes to iterative process? The staff are the group of people who come out with what? Questionnaires, who come out with surveys, and then actually direct to the respondents. So the respondents are the group of people who provide input when it comes to what? Forecasting. They are actually the consumers, right? Both what? Potential and what? Actual what? Consumers, right? That provide an input, right? So that the staff, based on their questionnaires, based on the survey, they can use and provide some kind of what? Chart and what? Table, so that they can use to feed the experts, so that they can also make decision or forecast for the organization. So the respondents are the potential customers or actual customers, right? That provides an input to the staff through questionnaires and survey, so that the staff can prepare a chart out of the survey or the questionnaires and then direct that to the expert, so that the expert will use that to what? Make decision. This is what we call the Delphi method of what? Forecasting. And the input can be a form of what? Let's say the new product the organization wants to introduce to the market. They can bring on board, or they can issue a questionnaire to the market and see how far the consumers, both potential and actual, will react to the new product they want to bring on board in terms of a brand and other issues. So they want to know consumer understanding, their preference, what they like, what they dislike, even in the existing product and the product they want to introduce now. So that once they get the input as information, they can use that to direct to the expert, so that the expert will use to what? Make the forecast. So this is what we call the Delphi what? Method. It includes expert, staff, and then respondents. So let's take note of that. And when it comes to the jury of what? Executive opinion, as we also call it, the judgmental sampling, kind of making what? A decision, and the qualitative forecasting. This has to do with what? Taking into account small group of people who are mostly experienced, who have mostly worked with the organization for quite long, and there are those group of people who understand how the organization always makes success or make what? Achievements within the organization. So there are a group of people to whom their information are used to make predictions for the future, right? Because they are well experienced, they understand how the organization can put in place certain mechanisms that will help them to achieve what? Better performance or better output at the end of the day. So the organization, if they lack information about what data in the past, then they can depend on what? This small group of people who are managers, who are highly experienced, who have worked with the organization for quite long and understand how the organization will work and succeed in the market, will take out their information and use that to what? To forecast for the organization. This is what we call the jury of what? Executive opinion. So you take into account the estimate, or we take into account the opinions of what? Highly executive people who understand the organization and has gotten a lot of experience with the organization, and use that to forecast within the organization. So that's what we call jury of what? Executive. So here you can clearly see what the issue about bias will come in there, because we are just taking the opinion of a small group of people without considering the whole organization, right? And we use a few group of people to forecast for the whole organization. What will happen? Then that will lead to what? A bias. And we'll get to understand what bias is when moving forward in that line. And we also talk about the Salesforce composite. The Salesforce composite also has to do with what? A means of forecasting, a qualitative way of forecasting in the organization. And what does that mean? Sales forecast in a sense that here we have what? A number of what? Sales personnel, right? Let's say we have sales personnel A, personnel B, and let's say personnel C, right? Each sales personnel is located at different posts or located at different branch, right? And they have worked with the organization for quite a number of years, gotten experience, know how sales undertake, and know how sales actually moves within the organization, right? So they understand how the system works within the market in terms of what? Sales, right? So under the Salesforce composite, the organization as a whole will actually give them the liberty for them to come out with their sales that they can achieve for the next period that the organization wants to undertake the activity in relation to sales, right? So they will give them that liberty, that libra, for them to come out with their sales they want to achieve in the coming, let's say, week, or in the coming month, or in the coming period, right? So once they're able to come out with their sales that they want to achieve in those coming periods, the organization will weigh out those numbers that they have bring on board and see if it is realistic for them to achieve that. So let's say A plan to come out with, let's say, 200 sales. B, let's say, plan to also sell for the next coming week, let's say 300, and let's say C plan to sell, let's say, 190. The organization as a whole will weigh these numbers of sales that they want to achieve for the coming period and see if it is realistic for them to achieve. And once they find that it's realistic, at the end of the day, they will pull out these numbers that they have gotten from these personnel. They add them together as one and use that to forecast for the whole organization. This is what we call a sales force composite. A sales force composite. So here we take the input from sales personnel actually who are located at different posts and then forecast. Once we get that, we put them together and use the forecast for the whole organization. This is what we call the sales force composite. So let's take note of that. And you also have the consumer market survey. The consumer market survey has to do with where we take input from our potential and actual customers depending on their plans and their future purchases that we want to engage on, right? Most of the time, the consumer market survey, you can see another test as customer market survey. We don't see consumer market survey, you see customer market survey. They are the same thing actually, just change of words. You don't see consumer, the same thing as a customer market survey. So don't get confused when you see that. So as I said, the consumer market survey is actually a way of forecasting, a qualitative way of forecasting that take input, right, from the potential and actual customers concerning their future plans in terms of purchasing. And even as well, also want to know if, let's say, the organization want to come out with a new product, they also want to know their perception, their preference about the new product they want to introduce to the market. So they will take input from this market. This is what we call out-in output. We take the information from outside, we bring it inside, and then at the end of the day, based on that, we bring the final product out. So this is what we call out, in, out. Out, in, out. We take the input from the consumers or the customers, we bring it in, process it, and then bring it out and sell back to the same consumer again. So this is what we need to when it comes to a consumer market survey. We take input from both potential and actual customers concerning their future plans, and even as well in terms of purchases, and even as well the kind of product that exists in the market from the organization, even the new product we want to introduce to the market. We want to know their perception about it. We want to know their preferences. We want to know whether they like it or they don't like it, whether we should take it out or we shouldn't bring it out. I mean, these are the information that we take it from consumer market to survey, so that we use that to actually forecast for the whole organization. So this is what we call the qualitative method of forecasting. And that we have the Delphi method, jury of executive opinion, so called the judgmental sampling. We also have the sales force composite, and lastly we have the consumer market survey. So this is what we need to understand when it comes to the qualitative method of forecasting. So thank you for watching this video. So in our next video, we are going to look at quantitative method of forecasting. And in that, we're looking at two approaches to forecast using numbers, and we're looking at the moving averages and then exponential smoothing. So thank you, and if you haven't liked the video, do want to like the video and then subscribe to the channel and share it out. So I will see you next video where we'll look at quantitative method of forecasting. Bye bye.